Right, good morning everybody. Thank you all for making some time to come and see us this morning. This is our question. We're dealing with promotional mechanics, as you can see. Looking at how effective these are in delivering consumer and publisher value. Are the current portfolio of promotional mechanics sustainable? Who are they really for? And what alternative strategies could yield improved returns for all parties in the future? So to help us answer this, Emily will be talking about the mechanics we're currently using and why some are effective at delivering value and why some aren't. Christina will talk about the sustainability of trying to maintain the current promotional mechanics and who they're really for. Sandy, right in the end there, is going to then focus upon a few alternative strategies that the industry could consider to improve return for all parties. And finally, I'll reflect upon some themes of the presentation that I would like you to take away today. So without further ado, Emily.
So, how effective are the current portfolio of promotional mechanics in delivering publisher and consumer value? Well, it depends what each party's objectives are. The main objectives for publishers are boosting costs in order to support and grow listings, increasing handling outside of normal listings in order to grow ABCs and ultimately advertising revenue, to drive frequency of purchase, so the promotional mechanics serve as a reminder to highlight new issues to current readers and remind them to pick up the next issue. Sampling to new readers, the front of fixture positioning increases visibility and therefore increases the chance of new readers coming across the title and picking it up and ultimately eventually converting into a subscriber. In terms of profitability, however, the promotions are currently, especially for smaller publishers, not profitable just because of the high cost of promoting in such a large number of stores and the cost of then supplying the copy for all of the mechanics as on top of their normal listing. So moving on to consumer value, promotions are rarely effective unless they are delivering value for money for consumers. Some of the most successful added value that we have are competitions, so those with high value prizes and multiple chances of winning tend to work best. Cover mounts, so free supplements, gifts, extra and exclusive content in bumper issues, and link saves across various titles, especially when themed around an event or an occasion. Supported with eye-catching POS and a genuine saving for the consumer. For example, this promotion here was run across various women's titles for Mother's Day with a buy two for £6 offer. So currently, promotional mechanics can be booked by any title at any time, whether they have any added value or not. Which as a result means that consumers are faced with lots and lots of different individual promotions highlighting issues with no excitement or added value, which results in a potentially confusing and ineffective display at retail. POS is really key for this category, but it's quite often limited or non-existent, so it's quite difficult to get messages across to consumers. So therefore, based on this, we feel that the current portfolio of mechanics is not delivering as much consumer value as it possibly could be, and therefore not working as hard as it could be to deliver our publisher objectives. Later on, Sandy will be talking about some alternative strategies, but for now I'll hand over to Christina, who will be looking at the sustainability of the current portfolio.
So after conversations we've had with colleagues from all areas of our supply chain, the current activities do not seem to be sustainable for a number of reasons. So starting with space cuts, as recently seen in Tesco's and Morrison's, the revenue that retailers are seeing from their magazine fixtures are decreasing year on year, and promotional spend is keeping the category profitable for them. With that though, the promotional mechanics are increasing in cost, and unfortunately volume sales are decreasing of titles. However, the minimum amount of copy required in order to fill a promotional slot is staying the same year on year. However, across nearly all titles, volume sales have been decreasing, making promotions extremely copy hungry, adding to the cost. There is also wholesale to consider, so wholesale offer a sales-based replenishment service, but the question has been raised of how sustainable is it to keep sending such small amounts of copies into stores, and will the complexities of the logistics involved be worth the return over time, especially with more depots consolidating into bigger sites. Is the current reach enough to continue with this process? There's also merchandising, which adds to the cost involved in promotions. This, however, is sometimes necessary to ensure the correct implementation of promotions and the setup of the point of sale. It adds a level of security for the publishers, knowing that their copies are literally being walked into store and placed in the paid-for space correctly. There are also retailer constraints, which are adding to the unsustainability of the current activities. News and magazines is a category that relies heavily on creativity in order to attract attention. And in many cases, there are very strict guidelines on the font, colour and icons which can be used on the POS, which leads to very generic, repetitive messages which lose their effectiveness and blend into the rest of the store, becoming part of the background, rather than standing out and drawing the attention that they need. Although there are some areas of the magazine sector, such as traditional women's weeklies, which are habitual purchase, the category as a whole is classed as impulse, so we need a point of interest in order to attract attention in store. So we have found that it simply comes down to retailer space versus publisher budgets, and the overall misaligned strategies across the supply chain that make promotions unsustainable as they are. There are now less promotional mechanics in stores due to space cuts, and the ones left are increasing in price. And there will come a tipping point where publishers will move away from retailer promotions if they can no longer sustain them, or if they're restricted on how creative they can be with their promotional campaigns. So who are these promotions really for? Well, it depends who you ask. Everyone has something to gain from promotions. The retailer needs to have an offering for their consumer, giving value to the products. Retail exclusives add something extra for the consumer, and they can be tailored for a specific retailer's demographic, combining titles popular in their stores. The sale of promotional mechanics help meet the retail buyers' monthly profit targets and help provide cash revenue. And by block booking mechanics with one distributor makes it a very efficient and effective process for retailers. The publisher and the distributor, well, the ultimate aim for promoting is to protect your listings and your brand. Big launches don't happen as they used to anymore, so in order to continue getting the retailers help through promoting on launch issues and providing ad hoc space throughout the year, all helps with the visibility of titles and builds the partnership between retailers and publishers. The consumers hopefully benefit from promotions by gaining value, gaining inspiration and being excited enough to make that impulse purchase. However, the ultimate reason for our industry to promote and continue doing so is to encourage consumer sampling. Trying to entice people to pick up the titles, reminding them of the passion involved in creating them, is what keeps the industry alive. So I'll pass on to Sandy now, who will present her ideas for alternative strategies to help keep promotional mechanics sustainable.
Thanks, Christina. So we'll be looking at alternative strategies, more specifically to those that yield improved results for all the parties involved, being for the retailer, the wholesaler, the distributors, publishers and consumers. So the first point that we looked at is event sampling and distributors. So the use of brand ambassadors, distributors and holding events is that it will increase brand awareness, and ultimately it creates a sense of excitement around the title as well as the product being promoted. Secondly, we looked at loyalty schemes. So the idea is that consumers will feel the need to repeat purchase because they feel that they're getting more value from it, and ultimately it will increase the frequency of purchases of magazines. The next three are those that we think could be utilised a lot more going forward. So store-specific promotions and merchandises. So the use of store-specific promotions means that the promotions are targeted, and so ultimately it should yield higher sales as they are targeted, and also saves on such as carrier costs and on printing. And this also links in with merchandisers because it makes it more efficient to use merchandisers to have to implement the promotions, because who better to action the POS and the fixtures than the merchandisers who can walk them in. The second being more distributors having control of space. So the idea is that this will enable more creativity with the POS and promotions, and we can offer more genuine promotions according to the store-specific promotions. And lastly, we looked at out-of-category promotions and cross-category. So this will enable consumers to sample a title, for example, they may not have considered sampling before, especially cross-category. And out-of-category creates the kind of theatrics around the promotions. For example, being able to access the magazines in another aisle of the store. What does this mean for the parties involved, and how does it yield results? So for the retailer, the idea of store-specific promotions and cross-category, out-of-category, it will ultimately result in impulse purchases and removes complexity by the use of merchandisers to implement the promotions. And for the publisher and distributor, it enables them to have more control and creativity of the promotions. We know that promotions where the fixtures and POS are clearly visible will enable consumers to feel that it's more targeted towards them, and it's they'd rather go towards that than a bland promotion. Lastly, for the consumer, it creates value, theatrics, and a chance to sample. So again, cross-category and out-of-category, they can sample a magazine that they may not have considered sampling before. So I'd now like to pass over back to Joe, who's going to conclude our presentation.
Thanks, Andy. Hopefully, certain themes have come across in our presentation today. We don't believe the current promotional mechanics are working as well as they could. They're not maximising value to all parties. They're expensive, complicated, and suffer from conflicting agendas. In a world of declining sales, this is not sustainable. This also then begs the question, are promotions actually helping to stem the decline of the magazine market? As part of our research, we asked this question to parties up and down the supply chain. The answers we received were a unanimous yes. Despite not maximising value, being as effective as they could be, they are nevertheless vital for the future of the sector. Therefore, we need to make promotional mechanics more sustainable. Sandy ran through a few alternative strategies, at the heart of which is a stronger offer for the consumer. Promotions need to be promotions, be it store-specific, out-of-category, industry themed, and not just extra magazines in better listings in store. These ideas rely upon greater collaboration between parties. The current mechanics being utilised, for the most part, are operating in isolation. We ultimately believe that to combat the systemic decline in magazine sales, a more coordinated response is required. We don't necessarily see this as a doom and gloom scenario. We see it as a real opportunity for the industry to come together to try and experiment and innovate. We've already seen some excellent out-of-the-box promotions, such as Press Pause, and we're hoping to see more collaborative and industry-wide campaigns moving forward. We believe this area is really important to the future of newspapers and magazines, and so much more could be said, which we simply couldn't fit into this short presentation.